Good morning, artists. So today you guys should be starting to think about revising your first draft and beginning a final draft based on the feedback that you gave yourself this week. You should have finished up your first draft yesterday and you should be moving on to your final draft if you want. It's not an assignment posted yet, but if you want to get started, you can. Just make sure you don't go too far into detail because I will be working with individual students on giving feedback to make sure we can improve and show growth between our first draft and our final draft. So I thought today could be useful to just have a quick tutorial on a couple of different techniques you can use for your drawing. Some of you guys might be doing a drawing with people in it, some might have a drawing with landscapes, so I'm just going to show you a couple of things that you can draw and ways to improve certain things in a drawing. Not all of these techniques will apply to your drawing, but it's good to kind of think about how you can improve what you've done. So if you are drawing something with people, the most appropriate way to map out a person in a quick sketch is going to be just a basic stick figure. So hopefully you guys know how to draw that. I know I've seen a lot of you do this kind of thing in class. And this is fine. A stick figure is a good place to start. But you want to make sure we think about how we can make this person look a little more advanced. So right now I have the basic stick figure that I'm sure you've been drawing since you were in kindergarten. Now that we're in middle school, we want to see how we can advance that stick figure. If you remember from the classroom, I had those little drawing models. I actually have another one here, so we're going to just look at it real quick to see how we can improve our stick figures and make them more advanced. Alright, so this is my little drawing model. It's taking up a little too much space for my setup here, but you can see our stick figure here has a head, a spine, and two little stick arms and two little stick legs. When we look at an actual person, we think about, okay, they actually have a lot more structure to them. So the first thing we need to do is think about how the arms don't just attach directly to the spine. We have shoulders that they connect to, and the legs don't directly connect to the spine. We have hips that they connect to, right? So this is going to be our first step in making our little stick figure come to life a little bit more. So I'm going to keep the little oval for the head. I'm going to draw the spine. The arms are a little farther down because there's a neck, but remember we have to add shoulders first. And we are going to add hips as well. Now my poor little stick figure has these arms that just go straight up, but if you're looking at a real person, or if we're using this drawing model as an example, there are joints, right? So people have a bend in the shoulder, people have a bend in the elbow, they have a bend in the wrist for the hand. So we want to make sure we include two different arm segments when we're drawing. You can pose your person however you need to, but for now I'm just going to keep a basic pose of standing straight forward. So I'm going to draw two segments, one on each side. I'm going to do a little circle. The circle will represent the elbow. Your elbow comes in a little bit, made him a little bit too short, so I'm going to extend this spine a little bit more. But your elbow kind of hits, if you were to stand up and measure where your elbow hits on your actual body, it hits kind of right around your waist. And then your hands, your forearms come down from there. You can draw two little ovals for the hands. Okay? Alright, so now my little person needs legs, so I already have the hip mapped out with a line here. So I'm going to add my legs. Remember, same idea, you have two segments of the legs, so you want to make sure that there is a bend at the knee and a bend at the ankle. So I'm going to draw out my two segments, boom, boom, give a little circle for the knee, draw a line for the shin, and now I can give some feet, and the feet can go off to the side. All right, so I go from having a stick figure to having a much more advanced drawing. Now, a stick figure is always a good start. You just have to remember, think about how the human body is actually structured. You want to think about the skeleton and the different bones involved in composing a human skeleton to help kind of make this person look more realistic. From here, and this is where these little drawing models come in handy, you can think about posing them, and I wish I had a smaller model at home to work with. I got this giant one that's a little hard to see with this setup, but that's okay. You can, and he's got a little, an adaptation here with his metal wire arm. Funny story, I had a student back in, God, it must have been about 5 years ago when I used to teach high school, and they were just using this model in the classroom, but it's an old one and it broke, and they felt so bad about it breaking that they ended up making a wire arm. So we're just gonna let him rock with his wire arm. It works. But you can pose this person however you want. So just like I could bend and move these like you do in the classroom when you're seeing them and using them in class, you're gonna do the same thing for this little guy. So if I want him walking, for instance, I'm gonna draw the shoulders a little bit more sideways because I'm seeing this person from the side. I'm gonna draw the hips kind of like this, and I am going to bend those legs like so, okay? So right now I can pose the arms in a different way as well. If I want him walking, that's fine. After I'm done posing my person however I need them to be, I want to give them some muscle mass on top of the skeleton. All right, so even if I keep it just like this, I'm going to go ahead and it's almost like you're just adding shapes. So I'm kind of filling in the basic shapes that I see. Okay. All right, so I'm filling in the basic shapes that I see. I've got everything the way that I need to have it right here. Now I have something that looks a lot more realistic than the stick figure. So just remember those steps. Again, you can pose them however you want. It's gonna take practice to get it to the way you want it to be, so that's fine, don't worry about it. But you just wanna think about how you can pose these figures in a certain way, all right? Okay, so most people have pictures of people in their sketches from what I've seen, so try to get your stick figures to this level. Today, you can just watch this video. You're gonna write a quick response to it for a credit. And then I want you to just make sure that you are adding enough detail to that first draft and revising the work to make sure that you're showing, enough detail to communicate your quote. If you have some other objects, like right now, I'm gonna look at some nature-y ideas. So we have our little people. And just like in class, like I've taught you before, you want to think about how to break things down into basic shapes. So if you're drawing a setting, for instance, let's say I have a landscape. Instead of just having the ground at the bottom, think about adding some dimension to it. If it's in nature, if your setting, whatever your quote is about, is in nature, you want to have kind of some rounded hills, right? You might want to think about adding different shapes for trees. So one thing I often see in younger kids more so, you guys are more advanced in this, but I see little lollipop trees, right? You can do better than that. We don't have lollipop trees. So one way to make these trees a little bit more advanced is just by taking this shape here, and we're going to blend it out like this. We're going to kind of make the roots come out. You want to think about the way a tree is actually shaped. And you are going to bring the top part out and make little V shapes for the branches. I could keep going and get really fancy and add a lot of different V's for the branches, but for now, this is where I'm going to kind of leave it. I can also go ahead and do some, instead of doing just a lollipop, I'm going to do almost like a cloud shape or several cloud shapes. And if I want to get super fancy to make my tree look a little more realistic, I can actually go in there and start adding little leaf shapes. Keeping it simple to start, the easiest way to make a leaf shape is just kind of make an oval shape with a line down the middle. So if I want to get really detailed and fancy because I'm working on my first draft, I'm moving towards my final draft, I could go in and actually add all these little bitty layered leaves to start getting that texture. So I'm using repetition. You guys remember that from the Elements and Principles. I'm using shapes and lines, repetition, to create texture, which is again another element. So we're tying in all these different ideas. The more detail you start adding, this is why I don't grade you on talent. I'm just working on looking to see if you can start thinking about how you can make your pieces more detailed. But once I'm done with this, the repetition of these shapes and lines, I have a lot more. You guys can see right here. This looks so much more advanced than this right here. Okay? For buildings, if you were trying to make a building, keep it simple, right? Like I think about maybe drawing my apartment. So let's say I have a city block, all right? I'm going to draw a little line down here. This right here can be my road. If I want to get fancy, I can draw some diagonal lines to represent my sidewalk. And then for my buildings, all I need to do is separate these sections into some rectangles, maybe make some taller, some shorter, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and add details. So think about what you need to add. Does your apartment have 2 floors, 3 floors? Mine has 4, I believe, 4 floors. So I'm going to make a little teeny tiny door down here. There's actually business in the front of the building that I live in. So I'm going to draw a window for that business if I want to be real fancy. Then I can draw the actual door to the apartment here. Okay, and then you can think about, okay, how many windows does my apartment have? Actually think about the details, right? So I would actually have to expand this because I just told you I have 4 floors in my building and I only drew 3. But then you want to think about the details like, okay, the windows of my building kind of look like this, so I'm going to separate into 2 panes. I know there's a fire escape in front of my building, so if I want to draw the fire escape, that might make it look a little more realistic. So you just want to think about all the little things you can do to add detail to make your picture look more believable, as if it's a real place, okay? But now I'm starting to see, I'm building up a whole scene, a whole feeling. If I look at a building like this that has these fire escapes in the front, it automatically feels like New York to me. Instead of, maybe I want to draw a different kind of house. Maybe my quote is about something with nature. I could draw something like a log cabin in the woods. Again, just think about how you can make it more detailed and start adding little bits of detail here and there to improve your work. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to help you brainstorm different ideas, but I just want to see you guys putting together some more advanced drawings. Start building up those drawing skills. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just try to push yourself to add more detail. If you have questions about developing that first draft or moving on to ideas for your final, please let me know. I'm happy to help. I just want to see where you're at, and we will work to make these some really awesome positive quote drawings or art pieces.